Welcome to the Ocular Surface Academy podcast, TFOS DEWS 2 edition. Join us as we meet with the researchers behind this landmark international consensus. Each episode will feature practical clinical takeaways. Before we get to today's episode, here's a quick word from our sponsor.
At Gallant, we know that very often eye diseases aren't just painful. They can be life-limiting for patients. Because diseases like dry eye can have severe physical and emotional consequences. So we committed to helping these patients. We assembled an unmatched team of eye care professionals. We pioneered a whole new technology for ocular medicine. We developed and launched the first BID steroid for post-operative pain and inflammation following ocular surgery. And we are now launching the first and only prescription therapy specifically designed to address the short-term treatment needs for people living with dry eye disease. We are Gallant Pharmaceuticals, and we are committed to advancing the treatment of eye diseases. We are creating our own trail, and now we are at the beginning of the next chapter in our exciting journey together.
Welcome your host and co-host for today's episode of the Ocular Surface Academy podcast, Dr. Scott Schachter and Dr. Christopher Starr.
Team Sullivan, Team TFOS, welcome today. Thank you for joining us today with, I always like to call superstar Dr. Chris Starr and all things TFOS. Really appreciate this. This will be our last couple of episodes running through TFOS DEWS 2, and Dr. Sullivan has been a major contributor, so thank you. And I understand you're joining us from the Vatican today. Is that right? You finally made it to Italy, I understand.
One of the pontifical suites, yes.
The TFOS suite at the Vatican, right. It's got a great view. It's got concierge service. And
Amy needed some new shoes, so she went outside the Vatican to go find those. So,
all right, great. What I wanted to do today, we'll just kind of briefly wrap up TFOS DEWS 2 in a bow, and well, I'll let you both just kind of briefly, Amy Sullivan, David Sullivan, I know you very well, but maybe just give us a couple minutes for the listeners to reintroduce yourself. Amy, we'll start with you.
Hi, Scott. Thank you again so much for sharing TFOS DEWS 2 literally with the world. It has really been amazing from the TFOS perspective. I'm Amy, as you noted, and I'm the executive director and co-creator of TFOS. And I've been along on this TFOS DEWS 2 ride with you and all of your colleagues around the world for several years now. And it's really exciting to see that the education is still going literally very strongly. And I think there have been more than 500 presentations around the world for TFOS DEWS 2. So the fact that you're sharing more education with everyone is really impressive. So thank you. And thank you, Chris, as well, for being part of the TFOS team.
And David, I'd allow you to tell us about yourself, but there's just too much to tell. We don't have enough time.
Great. So I'm a founder and the chairman of the board of directors of TFOS, and I was almost 40 years on the faculty at Harvard Medical School doing research. A lot of this related to the front of the eye. So here's where we connect in. For the TFOS DEWS 2, again, thank you very much for doing this podcast series for both of you. And it's only too bad that we can't get the TFOS logo up on those trees in Maui. But anyway, just as Chris has in New York City, but whatever. Yes, I think that with the publication, actually, the whole goal of the TFOS DEWS 2 was to move the field forward in our understanding of dry eye disease. How does it all come about? What is it? What do we need to do about it? And I think those conclusions that we have and the recommendations and the presentations Amy's noted around the world have been great. In China, for example, taking one of the videos that we produced for diagnostic videos was put online, and within a few days, 40,000 downloads had occurred for this video.
I think that was in 24 hours.
So it could have been 24 hours. Also, we published it in the Ocular Surface, which is a journal. For the first 10 years of its life, TFOS was the key sponsor. The only people who got it were its members, pretty much. And we helped that whole journal grow. By publishing the TFOS DEWS 2 in that journal, we changed its impact factor from a little under 5 to over 12 to the number 2 eye journal in the world. I think overall, what we've tried to do is educate people about dry eye disease And it takes time to do this. And it's not just clinicians and patients, but it's also what we need to do. I think for TFOS DEWS 2 and these reports, I think really one of the major leaps that we have to do is somehow get this into the training of residents or fellows in training for eye care in general, and get this done around the world. It's still not done. And as another example, we have a series through TFOS of TFOS DEWS 2 summaries for both what is it, how common is it, how do you diagnose this and treat it, and why is dry eye or ocular surface disease important, which is going to be kicking off in a few days in the Gulf states of the Gulf, the Arabic countries, being run through the United Arab Emirates. And a key here is that dry eye disease is extraordinarily common in these arid areas, and yet the people there who provide eye care have no training in this area. They don't know much about ocular surface disease. And only now, through one of the TFOS ambassadors, Siham Lazreg in Algeria, are they starting fellowship programs. Another one, Mohammed Shahiq, is doing it in Egypt. They're just starting to learn about ocular surface disease. This quest to try to increase awareness about ocular surface, it's important and what we do about it, including dry eye, we have a long ways to go.
Well, I can tell you that I do a lecture every year with my own residents on TFOS DEWS 2. And one of my current fellows in cornea is Saudi Arabia, and he's going back in a few months. And I've been teaching him all year about TFOS DEWS 2. So hopefully he'll go back and teach everybody in Saudi Arabia.
A lot of opportunity. I remember the ocular surface, that being a membership. I can't remember when I joined TFOS, but it was a long time ago. And getting the ocular surface was always kind of a treat. How can doctors or anybody access the ocular surface now?
So all those reports through TFOS are supposed to be made available freely online. But it's not just making them available. I think it's also, and you could both comment on this, is how to best sort of inculcate the ideas or what we need to do or how to do it, or just diagnostic procedures or how to identify, how to get that there. And as an example, a few years ago, I gave a presentation at the New England Ophthalmologic Society meeting. And I talked about some of these TFOS DEWS 2 conclusions and recommendations. And one of my colleagues said to me, David, are you aware it's going to take about 10 years for the people you just talked to sort of understand what you just said? So how do we accelerate that training and that education?
So much work to do still. The impact of TFOS DEWS 2, how many, and I want to remind listeners that they can access TFOS DEWS 2 at tearfilm.org. You can download that. It's been published in many languages. It's very easy to find. How many diagnostic subcommittees? 12, 13, something like that. Amy, maybe just share remind listeners how much work went into TFOS DEWS 2.
TFOS DEWS 2 took more than 2.5 years. So it was really a massive adventure, shall we say. So the TFOS DEWS 2 initiative occurred 10 years after the original TFOS DEWS report. So it was actually really impressive to see how much we had learned in that 10 years, but also how much we hadn't learned. So those 2.5 years were jam-packed with learning and analyses and realizations that there's still a lot more to do. And people are even asking us, when is TFOS DEWS 3 coming out? I said, stop. We have a lot more to do before we get there. So, but yes, it was a very large undertaking.
Yeah, and as we said in the very beginning of this series, there was so much intriguing, well, to some, drama involved in this process. And different views of opinion.
Passion.
Passion. So the goal is to achieve a consensus and to do our best to do so, involving in that for TFOS DEWS 2, 150 people involved.
Over 20 countries with TFOS DEWS 2 as well. So it literally was a global consensus because there were eye care specialists from around the world who contributed to this massive effort. And it's really impressive.
Whereas where we jump off to this new TFOS workshop, if we just tie the bow on TFOS DEWS 2 and consider the next ongoing TFOS workshop called the Lifestyle Epidemic, ocular surface disease, where hundreds of people have expressed interest in participating. We really appreciate that. We couldn't include them all. But as of right now, although we haven't noted this, well, hopefully in a newsletter next week, there will be, not including the industry liaison subcommittee, which is yet to be finalized, we'll have 128 people involved in this subcommittee
from more than 30 countries.
38 countries and territories around the world, quite diverse geographically, people. And this one we can discuss too, but it's essentially about what people do directly or indirectly to themselves to promote or cause ocular surface disease.
Well, that's such a great point. And kudos to you for, Amy, you're one of the most patient people I know. And I mean, to get together 150 people and try to agree on the color of carpet, yet, let alone what is dry eye disease and how do we diagnose it and treat it? What does it mean? So great work by you. And I know, I'm sure it was your life for several years and Dr. Sullivan as well. So, and you raise a great point. What we want to talk about in our final episode coming next after this one will be the new workshop. So I want to thank you both again for everything and acknowledge your hard work and your passion to contribute to the professions and to the disease state and all that it does for our patients as well. Chris, thank you so much for being here today too. And join us for the next episode where we will talk about what Dr. Sullivan teased about, the new workshop, which I'm excited to hear about. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening. Join us for our next episode soon. Find us online at www.ocularsurfaceacademy.com, all major podcast platforms, and YouTube.
For over 18 years, iEco has been an industry leader of natural, effective, at-home dry eye management. From our line of tea tree eyelid cleansers and patented controlled moist heat compresses to our nighttime hydrating masks and daytime moisture chambers, we support you and your patients with scientifically proven products for mild, moderate, and severe dry eye. Join us today to experience the iEco difference at iEco.com. That's EYEECO.com.